you everybody for being here. And like I do every year, at least when we were in person, I just wanted to really acknowledge that you guys took the time out of your normal days, your normal weeks, whether you're leaving your job, your family, your loved one, to come here and spend time to talk about prostate cancer. It's a big deal, and most people don't do that, and we so appreciate that you are taking the time to learn more, to share with others in the community, and for those of you who are going to the Hill, to advocate and to make sure that we have the support that we need from the Department of Defense to really ensure that we continue to make the advances that are the things that are keeping some of our loved ones alive and certainly improving their lives on a day-to-day basis. So thank you so much for being here. As you heard, I think we've got an amazing panel up here. And in addition to some questions that we have written down to prompt the conversation, I think it would be actually better if you guys could raise your hands in the audience and please ask questions of these panelists. I think it's a big deal that we've had the opportunity to get them here together to take time and to be sort of a captive group for us. So please, no question is too big, no question is too small. And we'll make sure that they answer it. There are no dodging the answers here on the stage with our panel, even though we're in Washington, D.C. area, and that may be something that happens with our politicians. In any event, the first question that we have put together, and again, please just raise your hand and someone will come around with the mic if you have questions, is that I think we can start things off by just asking what each of our panelists is most excited about in the upcoming years in terms of therapeutic advances or knowledge advances in prostate cancer. And we will start with Dr. Dahut, who's joining us again from the American Cancer Society. So what do you think, Bill?
So I think what's most likely to have the most impact on overall survival in prostate cancer is really in empowering patients. And I think in order to empower patients, patients need to understand their own individual risk of cancer and how it can be modified over time. And that's something that we haven't done as well in prostate cancer as potentially other diseases. You know, we always talk about the average risk for prostate cancer. And the average risk, no one likes to be called average. And there are some men that have a much greater risk for prostate cancer because what we call rare variants they inherited, or sometimes because what we call a polygenic risk score, which is a combination of small abnormalities in what you're born with. And these risks change over time. And so to empower patients, subjects really, to know their individual risk, to know when they should be screened, how they should be screened, how frequent they should be screened, I think is transformational. And I think if we can do that together, I know we're coming up with guidelines, Chuck's coming up with guidelines, how to empower folks, to have this information over time can change things. And then if you're unfortunate enough to be diagnosed with a cancer, but remember, if you're diagnosed with cancer really early on, that's not a bad thing. It can be treated effectively. But when you're diagnosed with a cancer, to understand about your own personal risk, and then you can much more personalize your treatments going forward. And I think we'll be much more effective in doing that than simply this, one size fits all. So I'm optimistic. We're going to make great progress. I'm excited to hear the panelists here talk about it too. So thanks.
Great.
I'm next.
Sure.
I share your optimism, Dr. Dahut. In fact, my blood type is B positive, and I have a blood donor card that says B positive on it. And I carry it around in my wallet and pull it out every now and then. So I'm a lifelong optimist.
Yeah, I'm an O negative. I'm a universal donor.
So I'm just going to pick up a little bit on what Bill said. What we're beginning to see is we're on the verge of patient and clinician-empowered decision-making based on what the disease is telling us. And we're on the verge of seeing more individuals for whom, for example, active surveillance is the right option, being offered that and taking that as the right option for them. We're on the verge of understanding when a person is diagnosed with a Gleason 8, a Gleason 9 with adverse genomic features, that a more aggressive path could be useful for them. And in the middle, we're on the verge of a technological revolution is a pretty strong word, but a new era of the use of technology where we can use things like artificial intelligence to say, within a specific treatment group, this individual patient may benefit the most, this individual patient may not need aggressive treatment, et cetera, et cetera. So we're beginning to sort of marry our understanding of biology and decision-making and the diversity of this disease biologically.
Great. Well, thank you. So I'm hopeful. Dr. Crawford's also going to give us an optimistic view. It is a question about what you're looking forward to and grateful, hopeful expectations. So what do you think, Keith? What would you add?
Well, the first thing I want to say is this. At one time, with local detection, the data demonstrated that the 5-year survival was 100%. Data coming out in 2020 states the 10-year survival was somewhere above, close to 100%, but you know, in science, we can't say 100%, but somewhere above 96%. You see what's happening. What's happening is that if you detect it early, your life expectancy is longer. And everything else that the gentleman said earlier is extremely important. I'm up here giddy because when I was a graduate student, the things that we saw in the laboratory, in the Petri dish, are now coming true. You had a robotic surgery. At one time, somebody said, well, I don't trust that doc. He only has 5 years experience out of medical school or out of his fellowship. But now you bring in robotic surgery, where the standard of a skill set is elevated to that of a robot that can repeat a task over and over and over again perfectly. You don't need to be scared. You need to look at this as if you just need to be healthy, stay positive, and let these new technologies that are coming down the pipeline. And you're right about AI, it's complicated. It is complicated in what your treatment option is. But the point is, the technology is there. And the running joke that I always have, it's like, I call it Zamboni. I'm sorry about my hockey analogy. So you have this puck, and that puck is, as long as the puck is moving down the ice, the disease is gone. Then all of a sudden the puck slows up and the disease is coming back. But some of the sponsors that are here, if not all the sponsors here, are like the Zambonis, laying down more and more technology. So sooner or later, it was very important what Zero said today about zero prostate cancer, and that's the target. But if we don't get to zero, prostate cancer could be a chronic disease. And that's what's so exciting.
Well, that is, yes. Thank you for that, Dr. Crawford. So, you know, I would echo all of these sentiments. I think that the therapeutic advances, and we'll talk a little bit more about them this afternoon, have continued to come fast and furious. The Zamboni is laying down more and more new ice. And what I am hopeful about sort of ties in with what a lot of these panelists have said is that we as a community, I think, are increasingly taking that active step to learn about it and to share with our loved ones so that men can get diagnosed early because they're thinking about the PSA and they're thinking about keeping each other informed and not afraid. And those who do have more advanced disease that may be harder for us to treat and may not be curable are talking to each other and sharing that there are more and more opportunities out there. And let's think about clinical trials to ensure that people like us are in those trials and can inform the doctors of tomorrow for other people that are like us and maybe even for me. If I'm in a clinical trial, maybe I'll benefit. Who knows? I hope so. So I think that we're as a community, we are moving forward. And I'm very hopeful. And certainly the people in this room continue to keep that hope elevated. So thank you guys for those comments. You know, I think one of the things that I worry about in my clinical practice and when I work with the Zero community is that opportunities are not always delivered in an equitable and even manner. And we even saw that this year from the American Cancer Society's recent updates in terms of what we see in terms of new diagnoses of prostate cancer, who is getting diagnosed with prostate cancer, and that there are differences in different populations, and I think this is important for us to explore. So we do have Dr. Dahut here from the ACS. I wonder if you can comment a little bit about the publication that I'm talking about, just to set the stage for everyone so they know what some of the updated data is, and then we can kind of dig into the disparities and the inequities that we might have seen in that paper so that we can think through how we as a community, from a panelist perspective, might try to tackle some of these.
Yep. So thanks, Alicia. So a little bit of background. If we went back to 1992 or 93 till now, prostate cancer mortality has fallen by 53%. I mean, that is spectacular. And it's
We can
it's
clap
really
for
good.
that.
Oh, you
We-
can clap
we can
about that,
clap.
right?
Got to pause for that one,
Yeah,
please.
and so that's the good news. Now, the not so good news is that over about the last decade, on a year-to-year basis, we're seeing a relative increase of about 4 to 5% of the men who are presenting with advanced disease. And we know the people that when they have advanced disease, this often includes people that are actually having incurable cancer. And so what we've seen, unfortunately, is that over time we've now seen a total flattening in the falling of the mortality rates among whites, despite over the last decade numerous effective therapies being approved. And in blacks, the numbers are almost flat at this point. And on top of that, we see these incredible disparities. We see black men are twice as likely to present with more advanced disease. Overall, black men are 1.7 times more likely to be diagnosed with prostate cancer, but 2 to 4 times more likely to die from the disease. And there's tremendous regional variations. Actually, in the southwest part of the country, if you're in Arizona, if you're in California, there's a much greater difference between diagnosis and death. So you're more likely to die from prostate cancer based on the relative incidence in California and Arizona than you are other parts of the country. And so it's not monolithic in the country, and it doesn't even always make sense over certain regions. That's why the research that PCF and others and FEN have supported, I think, is so important. And so at this point, we just can't just keep talking about it. If we look at the black community in particular, if you look at black men treated in the same healthcare system, the VA or the DOD, outcomes are the same, stage for stage, grade for grade. And actually in some of the clinical trials, some of the work that Chuck and others have done looking at certain drugs, it appears that black men may actually do better. So despite that, we have more black men being diagnosed and more black men dying from the disease. And this is different than in breast cancer. In breast cancer, actually more white women are diagnosed, but more black women die from the disease. So in black men, there's largely self-declared black men, a difference perhaps in the aggressiveness of the disease, as well as the difference of access to actually excellent care. So we can't have a situation where more men are being diagnosed with more advanced cancer. This is very rare in the cancer continuum right now. Almost every cancer, we're pushing things early and earlier on. We and others are having, a major, our impact initiative to bring all groups together, and then bring to impact, it's together, it's FEN, it's PCF and others, to really work together to really change the curves on mortality for everybody, and particularly decrease this disparity risk. So this is the time. We've got to just stop talking. Action's needed. So thanks, Alicia.
Thank you for that. So Keith, how can we take action? What are you and FEN doing? What can we do as a cancer community?
One thing you can do is what you're doing right now. We used to say, or we still say, politics is local, prostate cancer is local. Each person in this room may not be an official ambassador, but you are an ambassador. So you have to go back to the community. Take advantage of your contacts, your resources. Work with inside the church, HBCUs, setting up ambassador programs at HBCUs or at a college. And to a certain extent, I would even take it further, is we have to start educating our youth, our very young. A long time ago, I used to be a Cub Scout. And we learned about health when I was a Cub Scout. So why can't we learn about health, whether it's a Cub Scout or a Girl Scout? Well, some of y'all ladies were brownies, I know. But start there, and that's the message. One other area, too, that I wanted to bring up is this. In the United States, there are close to or over 500 actively recruiting clinical trials. 500 actively recruiting. And then you can put these into buckets. Metastatic castration-resistant prostate cancer, over 200 actively recruiting. So that message has to get out. So we reach out there. That's important because that message is important. Newsletters are important. Just talking, walking in the Gaylord, speaking with the concierge. You know it's just a blood test. It doesn't have to be a digital rectal exam to start. Oh, I didn't know that. Just that simple. But we just have to start. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, as a former brownie myself, I'm wishing for some of those cookies right now to eat the cookies, talk about prostates. It's good. So this is all really important, and I hope that we're all taking this in because you are the community that is spreading this word, and you are the community that checking out at the grocery store, wear your shirt, wear your swag. You know, prostate cancer awareness starts with each of us, with our communities, and with the messages that we put out there. And that PSA test is just a blood test. So I'm hopeful that we can share that, whether you're a man or a woman in this community, with the people that we interact with and care about. And you know, Prostate Cancer Foundation obviously has been recognizing the same issues and continues to support research in these areas, but you're doing more. You're doing some additional work now that you've come into the community too there at Prostate Cancer Foundation. So I wonder if you can share some of the efforts that PCF is having, and some of them I think in collaboration with ZERO in terms of young investigators, and how you're trying to support and help resolve or address some of these issues that we're talking about.
Sure. So both of my fellow panelists have identified that one of our biggest problems is a problem of communication. You know, we need better technology, we need more science, we need new drugs, no question. But if we could just implement the science, the technology, the drugs, and the approaches that we have more effectively, we could save a lot of lives and prolong a lot of lives. And so the challenges of communication are a couple of fold. You know, Dr. Crawford said, you know, it's talking to the people you run into, talking to the people you're sitting next to on the airplane or whatever about getting screened, and that's all good. But we've had a real communications problem with the medical community over the past several decades. And so in many ways, those who have advocated for early detection of prostate cancer have sort of lost the communications battle because it became, it was disseminated through physicians and through physician communities that early detection of prostate cancer was going to lead to overtreatment and essentially the maiming of men treating a disease that was never going to harm them. And it ignored the fact that prostate cancer, when treated with a thoughtful, risk-adapted approach, can effectively be handled with screening. As I said in my previous comments, and I'll color it in a little bit more, about 25% of men diagnosed with prostate cancer may not need any treatment. They're eligible for active surveillance. So risk-adapted therapy is the communicating piece we need to get across. But my point is we've sort of lost the communication battle with doctors, with primary care physicians, with medical communities. So we need to get that back. And as stark and as difficult as it is to see these data that have come out now to show the rising incidence of men being diagnosed with advanced prostate cancer, it also now gives us data to say, look, we need to change the communication. We need to change that direction of communication to where people are understanding about screening and risk-adapted therapy. On the other side of the coin, there is there's a real challenge in those individuals who are diagnosed with advanced disease that only 30 to 50% of men in the United States are getting the standard of care. Many men being diagnosed with advanced prostate cancer today are getting the therapy that was standard of care therapy in 2005, before docetaxel was approved, before abiraterone was approved, et cetera, et cetera. So there again, we have a communications challenge with doctors and with patients, but really if we can address this and make sure that all of the doctors who are addressing prostate cancer patients throughout the country are up to date, we can save a lot of lives. So to Alicia's question, what are we doing at the Prostate Cancer Foundation? We are taking this on not as a, we want to do this, we're taking it on as a, we have to do this, because we have to continue to spread the word about the new technologies, the new drugs, the new therapies, and the new diagnostics, because that's what's leading the improvement in survival.
Yes, of course, Dr. Crawford.
And that's an excellent point. And so to address this on our end at Finn, what we did, instead of creating an app, we created just an online Finn PSA for early detection screening. And so the point that people have is that, well, one doctor is saying this, or the American Cancer Society is saying this. Okay, that's a reliable source, because earlier in the morning we heard about misinformation. When you're going to the doctor, the average patient doesn't have the correct information. So what we created was a tool where you have a table that says, this is American Cancer Society. This is the National Comprehensive Cancer Network. This is American Urological Society and United States Preventive Services Task Force. All of those, and this is when they say start screening. So that's a reliable source. So now, if you want to screen, and if you're worried about screening or having that shared decision-making discussion with your doctor, doctors are not, they're your consultants. Now, your role is to have an interactional discussion with them. So screening is one. And then a tool that breaks down the treatment guidelines that were established by the National Comprehensive Cancer Network and places them not in some complicated map, but in a bucket for your diagnosis. It's not perfect, but it's a start where it's an online tool or a simple trifold that you can walk into your doctor's office, elbow to elbow, doctor, this is what I learned. This is a reliable source because it comes from the National Comprehensive Cancer Network. Isn't that the organization that you're supposed to be following for treatment? But those are some of the things that we're doing. Thank you.
So thank you for that. And let's just make sure that we emphasize that ZERO is a reliable source of information. Prostate Cancer Foundation, a reliable source of information. If you don't know if your source is reliable or you have questions, there are resources at ZERO. There are email addresses and ways you can reach us at ZERO, and we can try to point you in the direction of reliable information. Because walking into the office with the doctor and starting a conversation in a language that that doctor understands too, because a lot of this is just that we don't always speak the same language. We all speak English, but it's not always quite the same. And doctors don't always realize that they're not hearing us, and doctors don't hear patients, patients don't hear doctors, and sometimes they sort of ships in the night. So if you can come in and say, I'm starting from here, that helps the doctor anchor on, where are you coming from? And then they can say, well, that applies to you, and that's what I was trying to say. Or maybe they'll say, that doesn't actually apply to you because of this, and let me show you on the NCCN guidelines where you are, where you fall, and then you can see what they're reading about and help to find yourself in that guideline. because it just helps to bring us all together. And that's not always just your responsibility. So you have the power to make that relationship a solid one, to make that communication more solid, but you're not the only one in that relationship, and if you can't get it to work with that doctor, find a different doctor, okay? It's okay to get a second opinion. It's not your responsibility to say that doctor wasn't listening and I kept trying and I'm gonna just listen. Please, just ask for a second opinion. And if a doctor's offended by that, that's a problem with the doctor. That's not a problem with you, okay? So feel that empowerment. It's okay. So thank you guys for going through all of this, and really also thank you, Dr. Loeb, for talking to us about information that we can trust, and she continues to do research in this area. So if you have questions, look up Dr. Stacy Loeb on PubMed or on Google, and you'll find a lot of information. She's doing phenomenal work. So guys, it sounds like we're tackling a lot of things. We're talking about shared decisions, empowering people to come in and ask those questions, and ensuring that we all have access and that we all have the knowledge that we need to get the best outcomes. Do you have specific treatments or approaches to therapy that are really exciting to you? And maybe we can focus on different aspects of the disease, maybe advanced disease and then maybe localized disease. Dr. Dahut, what's exciting to you? And it could even be implementation, dissemination research if it's not a treatment.
I think that Chuck alluded to this a little earlier on. I think there's information out now, technology actually presented at one of his conferences and again presented at our conference in San Francisco, that's really going to be very helpful to tell men how long they need specific therapy. So right now, if you have a man with prostate cancer and you've chosen radiation, oftentimes there's a course recommended of hormonal therapy for months to years. And now we have information now based on largely AI technology of digital pathology. So essentially almost any hospital in the country or the world can share this information, can then tell a man that hormone therapy will help you or not. And that is just tremendous, because if you don't need that therapy, to be on that additional treatment is really something that has a tremendous negative impact. And if you need it, you need to know you need it. So I'm excited about technology such as that, science, digital pathology about that. It's really important. So that's one aspect. And then I think, again, as Dr. Ryan talked about, increasing abilities to personalize therapies. Again, in our national meetings, again, men with inherited, I hope everyone knows that if you have the breast cancer gene, the BRCA2 gene, that if there's somebody in the family, you're 5 times more likely to have prostate cancer and a more aggressive prostate cancer. And if you have that prostate cancer, there's different therapies you should look at earlier on. So again, additional information that certain inherited low-risk variants, we call it, genes, really leads to targeted therapy. So precision-based treatments along the way is the way we're going to impact quality of life and ultimately overall survival. So thanks.
Thank you. Very exciting. Let me just emphasize this. Genetic testing, absolutely recommended for any patient with prostate cancer who has metastatic prostate cancer. Also recommended for patients who have high-risk prostate cancer that's still in the prostate. The type of genetic testing I'm talking about, and I will review this later today, is familial genetic testing. And the same genes that can cause prostate cancer in you can cause breast and ovarian cancer in your daughters. So know that and share that. And daughters need to be checked if you have those genes. They can also be associated with pancreatic cancer, and other genes can be associated with some colon cancers and some other aggressive cancers. But if you do the genetic testing and you find it, there are steps you can take for your family to be safe in terms of their screening so that they can prevent a cancer or find one really early. So that's really, really important, and I'll say it again later, but make sure you know it's not just about genes for prostate cancer. Daughters and sisters are also important in this calculation. Thank you for that. Dr. Ryan.
What was the question again? I just want to make sure I exactly answer the question.
I digress.
I want to know what your PSA is.
Tell me what treatments, what's in the pipeline, what are you excited about?
Well, I just want to follow up on what you just said, which is actually genetic testing is extremely important and vastly underutilized. I think we know now maybe 15 to 20% on a good day of men with prostate cancer are getting genetic testing done, and it has implications not only for your health, it has implications for your family's health, as Alicia said. I'm excited about two things that are very different from one another. One, I want to actually point out that the PCF, and in large part led by Dr. Morgans, is diving into what we call survivorship research. And that's a really important area because men after a diagnosis of prostate cancer are living now 10, 15, 20, 25 years. I met a man in Seattle last summer who was diagnosed with metastatic prostate cancer in 1987, which was the year I graduated from high school. And so, you know, people are living a long time. That's great. But their bodies are changing because of the therapies that we do. So hearts are a challenge, stroke risk, diabetes, obesity, bones, et cetera, et cetera. So that's an area where I'm optimistic because now not only is it seen as an important area of research, people are entering into the field wanting to do that type of research in cancer, and that's a really wonderful thing. On the other end of the spectrum, I want to point out that as we think about the real big challenges in prostate cancer, why people die of this disease, and we look at that at a genetic, at a molecular, at a biological level, we see a lot of overlap with other cancers. And we have a good sense now as to the patterns and the pathways and the molecules, if you will, that drive death from cancers that might be prostate cancer in one individual, pancreas cancer in another, lung cancer in another. And we just launched a large research effort to target those mechanisms. And we reached out to teams around the world, and we funded 4 teams, and we made 2 stipulations, among others. They had to target the mechanisms by which cancer is lethal, but they got extra points if they could show how them targeting prostate cancer will help other cancers. And they had to involve scientists from 4 institutions or more. And what we got was a phenomenal array of applications doing amazing science. And the idea was to push things out of the labs into the clinics. And so I'm really excited about this work because I see these applications and I'm thinking there are several cancer therapies in this approach that we're taking. And so we need to focus on detection and screening, and this is all really, really important. And at the same time, we're really pushing the cutting edge of what we know scientifically and therapeutically about what we can do this disease. So mark my words, in 5 years, we will have a whole new array of other therapies for prostate cancer that will apply to other cancers as well.
We're looking forward to it. Thank you. All right, Keith.
Okay, that's better. Sorry. One thing I wanted to state is this. We identify a problem, and we plan to address the problem. Genetic testing is so important. 85% of genetic information in the world is based upon 80 to 85%. It's based upon people of European ancestry. That's not to point the finger at people with European ancestry. That's pointing the finger at black folks. We're going to have to participate in clinical trials because we talked about something that was important. Precision medicine, there was that robotics. But this personalized medicine, these new therapies that are coming down the pipeline that are based upon your genetic makeup, are so important. But that's exciting. But then think about having an antibody. So everybody in the United States, everybody in the world knows about vaccines and antibodies and all this other stuff. What happens if you have the ability to take a molecule that specifically targets a protein that's found on the cancer, PSMA, and deliver a radioactive payload, a chemotherapy payload, straight to the target? I want you to visualize that because that's what we have today. All it can do is get better. So you have to be excited. You have to believe that we're well on our way to making this a chronic disease. So that's radioligand therapy, immunotherapy. where we boost our immune system so now it fights the cancer? That's real. That's not in the Jetsons anymore. But that's real. And then what was very important was survivorship. And I want to throw in one other thing too, mental health. Because not only is the prostate cancer patient in need of mental health, but the caregiver is also in need of mental health. Because sometimes she or the family members is out there by themselves. And so we don't want them crying alone in the closet. We're all in this together. We're all part of this prostate cancer family, survivorship. And like you said, we're going to be living a long time.
Well
Well,
put.
that was awesome. Yes. Fantastic. So I think that brings this panel to a close. I'm going to offer Shelby the microphone. Do you want to close us out? But let's just one more round of applause for the panelists, guys. Thank you so much. And what a message of hope. Thank you. What a message of hope. What a message of hope. Thank you for that.